Let me begin with a question. Have you ever found yourself saying, "That's just the way I am"? Now pause for a second. Where did that belief come from? Who told you that you couldn't be different, smarter, kinder, more resilient? What if the barrier isn't your ability, but your belief? Mindset is not a buzzword. It's the lens through which we interpret every challenge, every failure, every success. And if we can shift the lens, we can shift the outcome. Let me tell you a quick story. There were two young sales reps in the same company. One kept saying, "No one is buying, the economy is terrible." The other said, "People need help making better decisions. I just have to understand them." Same product. One thrived, the other quit. The difference wasn't skill. It wasn't experience, it was mindset. You see, your mindset shapes your story, and your story shapes your actions. And your actions, they shape your life. Most people try to change their circumstances, new job, new diet, new relationship, without ever changing the belief system driving their decisions. But if you don't change the roots, the fruit stays the same. We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our mindset. So how do you start? You start by asking better questions. Instead of, "Can I?" ask, "How can I?" Instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" Instead of, "I'm not that kind of person," ask, "What would that kind of person do?" Because when you change your questions, you change your focus, and what you focus on grows. Changing your mindset won't make life easier, but it will make you stronger. It will make you more curious, more empathetic, more creative. It will make you someone others want to follow, not because you have all the answers, but because you believe the answers can be found. So if you want to change your life, don't start with your goals. Start with your beliefs, because when you change your mind, you change your world. When we talk about mindset, what we're really talking about is the filter through which we see the world. It's the internal narrative that runs quietly in the background, coloring every experience we have. This mindset, whether fixed or growth-oriented, acts as the lens shaping how we interpret challenges, setbacks, and even triumphs. Two people can face the exact same situation, yet walk away with entirely different feelings and lessons, all because their mindsets differ. Consider a challenge, a difficult project at work, for example. Someone with a fixed mindset might immediately think, "I'm not good at this. I don't have what it takes." Their interpretation frames the challenge as a confirmation of limitation. The very idea of struggle confirms a personal flaw or a ceiling on their abilities. This mindset tends to make people avoid risks or give up early, because the struggle is perceived as a permanent barrier rather than a stepping stone. On the other hand, a person with a growth mindset sees the same project as an opportunity to learn and improve. The challenge isn't a stop sign, it's a puzzle to solve, a chance to build new skills. Struggle doesn't define their potential, it refines it. This difference in interpretation has profound consequences, not only on whether they persist, but on how they grow over time. The growth mindset fuels resilience, turning obstacles into opportunities. This foundation, the mindset, is not just about how we handle problems, but also how we interpret success. Someone with a fixed mindset may view success as a confirmation of innate talent or luck. When things go well, they might attribute it to factors beyond their control and fear that any failure would expose their inadequacy. This fragile perspective can limit long-term progress because it places identity in external results rather than ongoing effort. Contrast that with someone who understands that success is a byproduct of effort, learning, and adaptation. For this individual, success is never a final destination, but a checkpoint along a continuous journey of growth. They don't rest on their laurels or fear failure. Instead, they use each success to build confidence and momentum for the next challenge. The mindset here allows for sustainable achievement rooted in self-efficacy. Mindset also influences how we interpret feedback. A fixed mindset often perceives criticism as a personal attack, something that challenges self-worth. This reaction shuts down learning and discourages experimentation. In contrast, a growth mindset views feedback as valuable data, a guidepost for improvement. This openness to feedback creates a cycle of continuous development that propels individuals forward, even when the path is difficult. Beyond individual experience, mindset shapes how we relate to others and the world around us. When we believe that people and situations are fixed and unchangeable, we may become judgmental, defensive, or disconnected. But when we adopt a mindset that embraces growth and possibility, we cultivate empathy, patience, and collaboration. Our relationships and environments become reflections of this underlying attitude. Ultimately, mindset is the foundation because it is the root cause from which all behaviors, choices, and outcomes grow. It is not simply a part of life, it is the architecture of life itself. How you interpret your experiences shapes your emotions, your decisions, and your future. Understanding this truth opens the door to transformation, as it reveals that lasting change starts not with external circumstances, but with the internal narratives we choose to believe. Beliefs are the invisible architects of our lives. They quietly guide every decision we make, every risk we take, and every habit we form. These deeply held convictions, often developed over years or even decades, act like a compass pointing us towards certain behaviors and away from others. When we say actions, what we really mean are the tangible expressions of those beliefs. In essence, what you do day after day is a direct reflection of what you truly believe about yourself, others, and the world. For example, if you hold the belief that you are capable and worthy of success, you are more likely to take initiative, seek out opportunities, and persevere when obstacles arise. This belief fuels motivation and confidence, encouraging you to step outside your comfort zone. Conversely, if you believe that failure defines you or that your abilities are fixed, your actions will naturally align with avoiding risk and staying within familiar territory. Over time, these behaviors reinforce the very beliefs that initiated them. If creating a self-fulfilling cycle, beliefs also shape how we respond emotionally to the events around us. When something goes wrong, you decide. The lens of belief determines whether we see it as a setback to learn from or a confirmation that we're not good enough. These emotional responses influence whether we move forward or retreat, whether we fight for our goals or resign ourselves to circumstance. In this way, beliefs become the emotional fuel behind every action. Importantly, beliefs aren't just about the big things. They also govern the small, everyday choices that accumulate over time. The belief, I don't have time to exercise, results in skipping workouts. The belief, I'm not good with money, influences spending habits. These seemingly minor decisions, repeated consistently, shape the course of our lives. The power of belief lies in its quiet, relentless influence over the small actions that build our habits and ultimately define our character. Beliefs are often formed unconsciously, picked up from family, culture, and past experiences. This makes them powerful but also fragile. Many of us carry limiting beliefs we're barely aware of, yet these beliefs dictate our actions in profound ways. Unpacking and understanding these hidden convictions is a crucial step toward changing behaviors. Without this awareness, we remain prisoners to automatic actions rooted in outdated or inaccurate beliefs. At the same time, beliefs can be consciously chosen and cultivated. When you begin to question the narratives you've accepted, you open space for new possibilities. For instance, replacing "I'm not a creative person" with "creativity is a skill I can develop" shifts your actions toward experimenting, learning, and creating. This active choice to adopt empowering beliefs can redirect your habits, decisions, and ultimately the trajectory of your life. Beliefs also influence how we interpret others' actions and the world around us. If you believe people are generally trustworthy, you approach relationships with openness and vulnerability, which often leads to deeper connections. If you believe the world is a hostile place, your actions may be defensive or withdrawn, limiting your experiences and relationships. These beliefs become self-reinforcing, shaping not only what you do, but how you perceive reality itself. Finally, the link between beliefs and actions highlights why changing your mindset is so powerful. If you can't simply change your external circumstances without addressing the underlying beliefs that drive your behavior. If you decide, when you shift what you believe about yourself and the possibilities available to you, your actions naturally align with those new beliefs. You creating a ripple effect that transforms your life from the inside out. Perspective is the lens through which we interpret the world around us, and it often matters far more than the actual circumstances we face. Two people can be placed in identical situations, facing the same challenge, obstacle, or opportunity, and yet their experiences and outcomes diverge dramatically. This divergence isn't random. It's the result of how each person chooses to perceive and respond to their reality. Our mindset crafts that perspective, turning hardship into a lesson or a dead end, success into motivation or complacency. Imagine two employees laid off from the same company on the same day. One sees it as a devastating blow, a personal failure, and a sign that their career is over. This interpretation can lead to despair, inaction, or withdrawal from opportunities. The other views the layoff as a chance to reset, to explore new passions, or to pursue growth outside of their previous role. Even though the external event is identical, the meaning each assigns to it shapes their next steps, and ultimately their future. This difference in perspective often stems from underlying beliefs about control and possibility. Those with a fixed mindset or a belief that the world is largely unchangeable may feel victimized by circumstances, stuck in a narrative where external forces dictate their fate. In contrast, those with a growth mindset believe that while they cannot control every event, they can control how they respond. This sense of agency empowers them to seek solutions, learn new skills, and adapt, turning challenges into stepping stones. The power of perspective is evident not only in moments of crisis, but in everyday life. For instance, someone caught in heavy traffic might react with frustration and stress, seeing it as a waste of time and a source of anger. Another person stuck in the same jam might use the time to listen to an inspiring podcast or reflect on their goals, transforming a frustrating circumstance into a productive moment. The situation hasn't changed, but the experience has completely. Perspective also shapes how we interpret feedback and criticism. If you perceive criticism as a personal attack or evidence of failure, you might shut down or become defensive. But if you see it as constructive insight meant to help you grow, you'll be more open, willing to learn, and better equipped to improve. The same words, the same event, have a vastly different impact depending on the mindset you bring to them. Moreover, perspective influences how we view others' behavior. In conflict, one person might assume negative intent and respond with anger or withdrawal, while another might choose to empathize, seeking to understand the other person's point of view. These different responses can either escalate tension or build connection. Again, the external circumstance is the same, but the interpretation and reaction shape very different outcomes. When we embrace the idea that perspective matters more than circumstance, we reclaim power over our lives. It means that while we not be able to control what happens to us, we can control what it means and how we move forward. This shift is transformative because it moves us from passive victims of circumstance to active participants in our story, capable of influencing outcomes regardless of external conditions. Finally, this understanding invites us to be more compassionate with ourselves and others, recognizing that everyone is seeing the world through their own mindset and that this shapes their reality, helps us avoid harsh judgments. It reminds us that what might seem like a simple situation can feel vastly different to someone else, and that changing perspective can unlock possibilities we never imagined. The stories we tell ourselves about our experiences are incredibly powerful. They are the narratives that give meaning to what happens in our lives and provide context for how we interpret success, failure, and everything in between. When we change these stories, we fundamentally alter the way we behave. You decide. It's not just the events themselves that matter. It's the meaning we assign to them that drives our actions. For example, imagine someone who faces a professional setback, perhaps a missed promotion or a failed project. If their story is, "I'm not good enough, and I never will be," this narrative will likely lead to withdrawal, decreased effort, or even quitting. The belief embedded in the story becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The behavior follows the story, reinforcing the original belief and limiting growth. Now consider a different story. This setback is an opportunity to learn what I need to improve. It's a step in my journey. This framing transforms the experience from a final judgment into part of a process. The individual is more likely to analyze what happened, seek feedback, and take deliberate action to improve. The story fosters resilience and curiosity, motivating behaviors that promote growth. Changing your story doesn't mean ignoring reality or pretending everything is perfect. It means choosing a narrative that empowers rather than disables you. It's about finding meaning that helps you move forward instead of holding you back. When you change the story, you change your emotional response, your mindset, and ultimately the choices you make. Our brains are wired to seek coherence and meaning, so the stories we tell ourselves help us make sense of complexity and uncertainty. But those stories can become rigid and limiting if we cling to them without question. By consciously re-examining and rewriting our internal narratives, we open up new possibilities. This shift allows us to break free from patterns of behavior that no longer serve us. Stories also shape our identity. When you tell yourself a story about being resilient, a learner, or a survivor, you begin to act in ways consistent with that identity. Conversely, if your story is one of victimhood or failure, your actions will likely reflect that. The story becomes a lens through which you see yourself and your potential, influencing not just isolated actions, but the overall trajectory of your life. This concept applies to both personal and professional domains. Leaders who frame challenges as collective learning opportunities tend to foster innovation and collaboration. Individuals who see mistakes as growth rather than defeat often develop stronger skills and deeper confidence. The stories we tell are contagious. They influence not just ourselves, but also those around us. By changing your story, you shift from being a passive recipient of events to an active author of your life. This shift is transformative because it places the power of interpretation and response squarely in your hands. Instead of being controlled by external circumstances, you become a creator of meaning, and your behavior naturally aligns with that new perspective. It's a common misconception that failure happens because we lack the necessary skills or talents. While skills are certainly important, what often stands in the way of success is something far less visible: belief. The stories we tell ourselves about what we're capable of, about what we deserve, or about whether we can overcome challenges act as gatekeepers to our potential. Without belief, even the most talented individuals can find themselves stuck, unable to move forward. Belief is the invisible fuel that powers motivation and persistence. When you truly believe in your ability to improve, to learn, and to succeed, you're far more likely to take risks and keep trying despite setbacks. Conversely, if your inner voice whispers doubt, "I'm not good enough, I can't do this," or "this is beyond me," it becomes a self-imposed barrier. This internal resistance can be more paralyzing than any external obstacle. Think about athletes who face challenges in their careers. Many of them possess extraordinary physical skills, but what separates champions from the rest isn't just technique or strength. It's the belief in their own resilience and capacity to win under pressure. When that belief falters, performance drops. When it's strong, it elevates them beyond what their skill alone would predict. The same dynamic applies to every field of endeavor. Belief also affects how we interpret failure. When you believe failure is a reflection of your worth or ability, it can crush your confidence and stop you from trying again. But when you see failure as information, a temporary setback, and a chance to adjust, belief becomes the engine that drives learning and growth. This mindset difference often explains why some people rebound quickly while others get stuck. Our thoughts create neural pathways in the brain, reinforcing beliefs over time. If you repeatedly tell yourself you're incapable, those patterns become stronger and harder to change. If you decide, this phenomenon means that limiting beliefs don't just affect your mindset. They shape the wiring of your brain, making new behaviors and successes seem more difficult or even impossible. Changing belief requires conscious effort, repetition, and sometimes outside support. Belief is deeply tied to identity. When you identify as someone who can't succeed or who isn't worthy, that belief influences your actions at a subconscious level. You might sabotage opportunities, avoid challenges, or not prepare fully because deep down you don't believe you deserve to win. Conversely, when belief aligns with a positive identity, such as seeing yourself as capable, resourceful, or deserving, you are more likely to engage fully and perform at your best. Sometimes the lack of belief stems from external messages received early in life: criticism, rejection, or systemic barriers. These influences shape the internal dialogue in powerful ways, but they don't have to define you forever. The first step to unlocking potential is recognizing that belief is learned and therefore can be unlearned or rewritten. It's not about ignoring reality, but about challenging the mental limits we impose on ourselves. When belief is present, it creates momentum. It propels people to stretch beyond what they thought possible and to develop skills that at first seemed out of reach. Without belief, potential remains dormant and opportunities go unrealized. Understanding this shifts the focus from, "Do I have the skills?" to, "Do I believe I can develop the skills and overcome challenges?" This shift in focus is where transformation begins. So, if there's one thing I want you to walk away with today, it's this: your mindset is the single most powerful tool you have to change your life. It shapes your beliefs, your perspective, your story, and ultimately your actions. When you choose to shift your mindset, you don't just change how you think, you change how you live. Remember, every great transformation begins with a decision. Decision to believe that change is possible, to embrace challenges as opportunities, and to rewrite the stories that have held you back. It won't always be easy. It won't always be comfortable. But the moment you decide to change your mind is the moment your life truly begins to change. Your future is waiting. What story will you choose to tell? What belief will you nurture? How will you frame your challenges? The power is in your hands. Change your mindset, and you change your world.